On this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast, we're joined by Allen Gingerich, and we are talking Beagles, all things Beagles. We're going to talk about hunting hare in the UP of Michigan with Allen's Beagles. He and his brothers take a trip up there every year and spend about a week chasing the snowshoe hare around the UP. It's a magical place. It's one of Allen's favorite things to do, and it's a great time. I've been there in camp. I wasn't able to make it this year because of other commitments, but I can tell you that I do miss that experience. We're going to talk about the UKC World Hunting Beagle Championship, or the UKC Hunting Beagle World Championship. We're going to talk about brace competition. We're going to talk about small pack option. But we're just going to talk dogs in general and beagles in general. I think it's going to be a great conversation. If you haven't done so, check out UKC's podcast. Trevor Wade and Allen sit down and tackle all kinds of rules, options, and rules discussions, and just current issues that are facing the competition coonhound world and all things that UKC handles on that end. So it's UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Make sure you check that out. Let's get down to it, folks. A lot of little beagles in there rattling the doors on this box. There's a hare to chase. It's time to drop the tailgate and dump the box. Hey, have you done an inventory on your hunting gear lately? How's that light looking? Are you in the market for a new one? How about your coat? Hunting vest? How about leashes, collars? Are all your dog meds up to par here? Are they all current? You can find all of these products at Cajun Lights. You can go to our website at houndsmanxp.com, go to our sponsorship page, and choose Cajun Lights. It'll take you directly to their website. You can shop all of their gear, and you can do it with confidence, knowing that you're dealing with good people at Cajun Lights. As a podcaster, it is necessary to have sponsors. In order for us to keep rolling out good, high-quality content for you to listen to, then we have to have sponsors. And I have always been very particular about who I will represent. I'm not just looking for their money. I feel like there's an obligation to you, the listener, to introduce you to companies that are high moral character, full of integrity, producing good products, and just people that will give you the highest customer service. And I've found that in L.W. Nixon. Since we started our partnership and relationship through his sponsorship of this podcast, I've talked to him numerous times, probably at least once a week. And he's become more than just a sponsor. He's become a friend. And I'm real particular about who I put that label on. When we talk, we don't just talk about business. We talk about life. We talk about America. We talk about the future of hound sports and hunting in this great country of ours. And I've found someone who I feel confident in their value system of honesty and hard work and patriotism. So when you hear us talk about Cajun Lights, we're not just trying to sell you a light or make a buck off of a commission. We're trying to bond this community together with like-minded people who want to make a real investment in the future of hunting and America. So shop at Cajun Lights. I promise you that you won't be disappointed in the products or the way you'll be treated at Cajun Lights. You can check them out at CajunLights.com. Allen, you guys just got back from the UP not too long ago, and man, I missed that trip. We just had double booked. We were going to Texas and different things, but how was the UP this year?
It was
chasing hare.
Yeah, it was.
I'll try not to say rabbit.
Yeah, it was as good as ever. Weather was good again. We were up there for a total. I was there for a total of 9 days. Most of them were there for up to between 5 and 7 days. But I stayed for 2 more days. It was so good. I didn't have anything else pressing to do, and I thought, you know what, I'm staying. So.
You stayed after Johnny,
yep.
And did Paul come up?
He
too?
did, yeah. All of my brothers were there except for one was out west working in Wyoming, so he didn't make it. I have one brother that doesn't hunt, but even he came up this year, so it was the first time we had him in camp, and and he kind of got to experience it a little bit, and he enjoyed it as well. We tried to get our dad up there too this year, and he's old, but he's 74, 75, I think, but it would have been. We just can't talk him into it. He thinks it's too much for him, but it would have been good to have him up there. But man, we had such a blast again for sure.
Did Johnny get a stove for the tent?
He did. Matter of fact,
How'd that work out?
He talked about that. It worked out fine after he figured out how to regulate the dang thing. I tell you what.
Was he running you out?
Oh man, that first night after he got it fired up, the first time couldn't get it shut down. And
no kidding.
No, he did literally, but we had to open up the vents in that dang thing, and I don't think I've ever been in an environment that was that damn hot. Seriously.
Like going through a Native American sweat.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
But you guys in there smoking peyote and with your intervision.
Well, I don't know, but it was. But no, that stove worked excellent. That was the ticket. But once we got figured out how to kind of get it regulated a little better, but that thing was sweet. Last year I think when you were there, I think we had the little propane. You
guys were about ready to die of hypothermia last year when I got there.
Last year we were cold.
That's the coldest night I've ever spent in a tent.
Yeah. But
it seems like when you get in, if you do not have a stove in your tent and you try to rough it out like that inside those canvas tents, everybody's in there breathing, and so you're putting all this condensation in the air. I swear it's 10 degrees, at least 10 degrees colder inside the tent than it is outside the tent.
Yeah, it feels like that, and I know what you're saying there, but no, the one thing that I was kind of surprised, it was, one day it rained there one day, and we had a whole bunch of wet clothes hanging in there, and still that thing just dried. The next morning everything was bone dry, good and dry.
Yeah.
But even with wet clothes around, I thought it might be a little more damp inside there, but it never was. It was just dry and
wood heat, baby.
Oh man, it's so comfortable. That's the way to go. That's the way to go.
Yeah. How was the weather in the UP? You guys were up there, third week of October, I guess.
It was. So we went up there it was actually October 20th is the day we took off, and it was snowing that morning. We got halfway up into Michigan. It was coming down pretty good. We got up to about Grayling. It was 30 miles an hour on the road snowing. Vehicles in the ditch. But then by the time we got up to the bridge, it kind of cleared out again.
You didn't get held up?
No, not like you and I did on that windy day. Remember that?
Yeah.
I've still not ever had to wait there to cross the bridge because of that. But no, so the first day we spent half of the day setting up, but you've been there to that one spot where we go to, where we camp out. But we got the dogs out, let them stretch out a little bit. Then we started flipping some dogs, and yeah, it didn't take long. We had a race going, just setting up on that first afternoon. And I think that first day, I don't know, we got 12, 13 miles on several of the dogs, but
that's
just around camp.
That's the cool thing about going up there and where you guys camp is you can turn dogs loose and listen to the race while you're setting up camp.
Yep. Oh,
it's so cool.
Yeah, this year we had another component. So you've seen the A-frame we set up in front of the wall tent, right?
I
think we had that last year when you were up there with that little solo stove. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
Man, that thing's a ticket now. We actually had it underneath that A-frame tent, and it worked fine like that. But my brother brought an RV up this year as well.
Oh, okay.
So we had it setting in front of that A-frame, and we had a nice little tent or a nice little camp set up this year.
Oh yeah, sounds like it. Yep.
We could actually take a shower out there without going uptown.
That is an added bonus.
It kind of is, especially after 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. All camping in the same tent.
Yeah.
So was there any snow on the ground? Did you guys get any snow while you were in camp?
No, we did not. We, like I said, it pretty much cleared up on that day we drove up on the 20th by the time we got to the bridge. And then the weather we had about everything. The first couple of days it actually got halfway sunny. And then from there, I think that was on a Thursday, and then by Monday and Tuesday, it was pretty cloudy. Tuesday, it rained all day. But we did run a little while, and in the evening, it was just kind of off and on raining a little bit, not hard. But you could, we still had dogs out and all that, but mainly just around the camp there. But then in the evening, we got on a runner, man. I'm telling you, you've been up there in that spot. You know where that swamp sets? That big swamp where I had you walking back through there.
Yeah.
Well, the dogs never.
Just walk back in there, Chris. I'm sure you'll.
Yeah.
That was a trick.
Yeah. But so we got on a little buck rabbit that we jumped, and he took probably one of the furthest ones I've ever ran. But we looked at by the GPS collars and everything. By the time he came back, he had went 1.2 miles from where they jumped him.
He looped out 1.2 miles.
Looped way out. And this was at the time when it was raining towards evening, and we were a little concerned. But yeah, we ended up getting soaked to the bone that night. But then after that, it was it was really nice. So had a couple days where it was kind of sunny, then some cloudy days, and we had a little bit of everything other than snow.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. So hunting back-to-back days, that many days in a row, did you notice a difference in the scenting conditions from like the sunny days to the cloudy days to the rainy days? Which do you feel, if you did notice, what days do you feel like your scenting conditions and the dogs just seem to run a little bit better on those days?
I think
Keep track of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think the midday on those sunny days were the toughest scenting condition days. They were. I think the best day that we had, or that I had, was on the last day that I was up there, was the following Friday.
That's because you were by yourself.
I was by myself.
Those are always the best hunting days.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my dogs look great.
Yeah, heck yeah, they did. They really did. No, but that day it was 47 degrees, cloudy, and just the air was kind of damp. Had a little moisture in the air that day, and I'm telling you, that was as perfect as any day up there.
Wow.
Just the conditions, and that was all day. It was like that just all day. And it seemed the scenting conditions and everything were just, even midday, were just kind of stayed the same.
Yeah, pretty stable all day long.
Yeah.
You had a couple days, or you had a day of rain a couple days before that.
Yeah.
And then it all settled down, and then you had.
Yeah.
We geek out about scenting conditions on this show all the time, so I think it's one of those things that, if guys pay attention, and you can figure it out without knowing all the geeky scientific stuff that Heath and I know. But the thing that's cool is to talk to guys that have just learned it from spending day after day and hour after hour in the field, just being observant of what's going on. That is so, I like talking to those guys. They don't know why it's happening, but they know that it happened just from experience. Yeah.
There was one morning, Chris, when it was 27 degrees up there. I'm going to say that was probably the first Saturday or Sunday morning. Saturday, probably. 27 degrees, and it was frosty. And a pretty hard frost. And for some reason, our dogs, not this year yet, but we run on in that type of weather and those conditions a lot. But on that first morning, when it was like that, they just acted like they couldn't hardly run anything. And we had a couple decent trailing dogs down, so I'm not sure. That kind of puzzled all of us a little bit. Just why it was like
first frost they've hunted in this year, you think?
It was, but even then, I can't remember ever having the dogs taking that long to acclimate to those conditions like that. But it was just something about that frost that morning. They just acted like they couldn't run very well.
Was it sunny was it sunny during
it was
sun coming up?
Yeah,
later?
It was. It was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until about 9:30 that morning to where, and you could tell when everything was good again, you could tell right away. But it was just kind of weird how the dogs struggled that much, because it's not something that unusual, This
Could
year,
could have been barometric pressure, something like that. But a lot of
something.
times, what I've found on those frosty mornings is as the sun's coming up and the rabbit's running and laying its scent down, that sun's coming up there for a brief period, that scent is actually rising and evaporating with the frost as the sun is melting that frost off.
Yeah.
And then once it calms down and it gets wet, then the scent will hold on the under storage and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had other folks coming and going, and we had invited you as well. You guys couldn't make it, but we had several other guys come and go, come up there for a day or two.
I've got a plan for next year. I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah.
We're not going to miss it.
But
what's the weather up there now in the UP? Have you checked it?
I have not today. I've
not. Is it varied?
I would assume so. Here I've seen some of the weather here going across Michigan here in the last couple days, and it looks like they're getting hit again. Here this morning in Kalamazoo, it's I'm not sure what day it is here, the 17th, I guess. But roads were terrible this morning. We got quite a bit of snow, but it was 20 and 30 miles an hour coming down the interstate this morning.
Too much snow to make another trip up, you think?
No, I hope not. I'm the next couple of weeks. I'm kind of deer season's in right now, but next couple of weekends I'm kind of tied up. But I'm hoping after that, maybe the weekend after Thanksgiving, hopefully I'll get a chance to get up there at least one more time. This year I have not been up there. I've only been up there the one time. Normally I've been up there 4, 5, 6 times. By now.
You're struggling, buddy.
I know I am. Too much work, Chris. Too much work going on. Too many things.
I hear you. I'm gonna have to check my schedule, Alan. If you need some company, to always check with me because I love going up there with you. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
I'm not just blowing smoke. Last year that trip was probably one of my favorite trips of the year for sure. And it's just the way you guys hunt and the way you camp and the way it all works out. I mean, it's just laid back, and it's just, Start cooking breakfast. Hey, let's cut a couple dogs loose while we're fixing breakfast. And you sit there and it's just like, hey, all right, on this circle, we probably ought to go ahead and take that one. I wasn't done with these biscuits and gravy yet, but I guess I can walk down the road there.
Yeah. A couple things. It seemed like the game population was better this year, and I don't. The only way I can gauge that, no more than I went up, is just by kickers. I think last year we had this conversation where I thought the population may have been down a little bit on the decrease a little bit, but whereas I mentioned just didn't see as many side kickers when they're running one, But this year again, I'm telling you, we saw a lot more of that again. And so it just seems like must have been a good season for it. And here's the other thing that was a little strange is we ran a couple of hare that were like babies. And I have not seen them that small this year. But then we had a friend of ours that was over on Drummond Island running at the same time, and he said that they had took one that had babies inside of her. And that's
we'll have to get the hair brain on this one, Seth, and run this past him. He claims that his jackrabbits out there, the blacktail, can actually be pregnant with 2 litters at the same time.
Really? Huh.
Yep. I don't know about the snowshoe. I'm sure he'll listen to this and have a full explanation.
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert on that part of it, but I just thought, well, that kind of, it was just kind of weird that we had ran a couple, and then he let us know that, hey, we just cleaned one out that had babies inside still.
Wow.
And we're talking middle of October here.
Yeah. How do you think the predator population is up there? It must be down.
You always talk to some of the locals up there, and I had some long conversations with a couple of them, throughout that week. And one of them one of the guys that owns one of the fisheries there in St. Ignace, came out there, but he's a coyote hunter, and he was talking about the coyotes seem to be back again more, and they're seen. And we heard quite a few of them up there when we were there, and but he was talking about the wolf population seems to have been busted up, and especially in the last 3 years, they're not seeing the bigger packs up there anymore like they were. And here again, Chris, I say this, and this is just what this fellow is talking about, because you talk to the locals up there, you get so many varying stories, on that. But I don't know, just talk to him for a while, and somebody that coyote hunts and things like that, But he said they moved, the deer population is almost non-existent up there. And he was pretty frustrated with that, and that how they've just pushed the deer out. But with that, he claimed that they've really pushed them down into the towns and things like that. And and he said he thinks a lot of them pretty much got busted up because of that, and
they're
probably
eating themselves out of house and home.
Yeah, and they're seeing a lot more just lone wolves, I guess, or when they do see them, and 2-dog packs, 2 or 3, not the big packs anymore.
Right.
So it's just kind of yeah.
Well, hey, you guys just finished up. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about UKC. You guys have been busy there in the Beagle world too.
Yeah. Fall, just like we always have our fall schedule that's busy. Starts Labor Day weekend, with big coon hunt there in Richmond, Indiana, Autumn Oaks. But then also with that, comes the Beagle World Championship, and then we also had another one, was the Beagle Gun Dog Brace National Championship, which was held the week after the Beagle World Championship. So second weekend in October, and then the third weekend in October for those 2 events, and came back from the Brace Nationals in North Carolina on a Sunday night, and headed to the UP by Wednesday.
I want to talk about that Brace Nationals, because I don't think we've ever talked about that event and what that entails. But give us a recap of the World Championship.
Yeah, so this year we had it in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, which is in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, just off Interstate 79, borders West Virginia there. But, man, Chris, we had one of the better ones. I've been involved in a lot of them, and this one went as well as any. We had, to enter the World Championship, those dogs have to be qualified, so the number isn't that great that goes to the World. We had 240-some entries this year. And a good number, really. It's up
that
there.
Is.
Yeah, it's up there. But those guys out there had put in a lot of effort for it, and got their spots groomed and some paths mowed so you could see game and this and that. But the most impressive thing, at the end of the weekend, we hunted a total of 74. I think it was 74 or 78 casts. It was in the 70s, and only one cast that did not have a total score of plus points. One all weekend long, and that just does not happen anywhere. So it was really good.
So, what does a club have to do? How much ground does it take? What does that look like for a club that's putting together an event like that for 74 casts of Beagles?
Well, that was for the total number of casts that ran through the weekend. So in the first round, we had a total of, I think, 57 casts is how it broke down. One of the things that is a little different than we do in our coonhounds, we have what we call a split entry event. So the round 1 is actually split in 2 segments. So you have a round 1A and then a round 1B. So I can actually have 2 dogs qualified. I decide which one I want to put in A and B, and then I handle one in the first go around, and then in the afternoon hunt, which is B, it's just continuation of round 1A, I'll hunt the other one. So it's that's kind of a customer friendly format like that. So that's the first day of competition, is 1A and 1B. So 57 casts there. And then after that, we broke it down into 16 casts and then 4 casts and then 1. That was the split. But no, that
4-dog casts, right?
Yep, 4-dog casts, just like night hunts would be. But 4-dog casts, and each,
Are they running on the same ground over and over?
No. They if every cast has their own guide. So if you were a guide, you would take your cast to the private places that you have permission to hunt. That's where you would carry them, much like a night hunt would be.
Like coon hound.
Yep. But yeah, it was at the Greene County Fairgrounds there, in the same place we've held coonhound zones at before. And there's actually several coon hunters that also run beagles there. But one thing on Thursday night, we have a dinner there for all the contestants and everything, and it's kind of a new thing for the World Championship that we've done now for the last 3 or 4 years. But that's always a great way to kick off a big event like that. And it was a free dinner that we provided for them. But I say we, in this case, out in Pennsylvania, Mr. Dr. Oz was running for Senate.
Right.
He actually came out to the Beagle Club, met with some of the guys at the Beagle Club. They took him hunting there, and he had gotten wind that the World Championship was coming there, and he actually funded the dinner on Thursday night.
No kidding.
Yeah. So they have a member who's kind of a politics guy and works with some of the local politicians, and it's good. That was a good example of how that is valuable to have somebody like that in your club, involved in your club, to bring in things like that.
At least familiar with it.
Yeah.
And it's we could go a lot of different directions with that conversation, but that's what we talk about all the time. That's what Sportsman's Alliance works towards. Their new Advocate magazine that just came out has a whole article on how to groom those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to have influence and survive in the future, we've got to figure out ways to get these influential people involved. They don't have to be diehard hunters. They just need to be familiar with you and have a relationship where they're not going to vote against you,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
in the long run. You don't have to go out and have the expectation of turning your legislator into a hardcore houndsman. You just need a guy that will listen to you, and you can build a relationship where he's not going to introduce and support some of this garbage that runs through our legislative halls.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like UKC's getting on kind of a trend here with these dinners and stuff. That dinner we had at the Tournament of Champions, and now you're doing it for the Beagle World Championship. You guys are stepping it up.
Yeah, well, it's just a good way. I've always felt that it's just a good way to, it kind of sets the tone for an event. It really does. And it used to be you'd have some folks show up on the night before the World Championship. It starts on Friday morning. That's the deadline is usually 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning for these Beagle trials. So that's an early day, early morning. And a lot of them would show up the night before, but you wouldn't see many out at the club or what have you, or at the fairgrounds, wherever you're holding the event. But so to have this, I think we had 200 and what they had seating for 250 people, and it was pretty much full.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how can you start an event off any better than having a banquet style? Mm-hmm. Get together, the competitors break bread together, and have that social time. It builds unity within the community. It's got to have some conflict mitigation effect on the event.
Yeah.
And I remember the old days. You'd show up to an event and maybe start the day before, but everybody's walking around sizing up the competition, and there was a lot of good camaraderie and conversation, but at the same time there was some tension in the air and nerves are high.
Yeah.
And you sit everybody down in the same room and you have a big meal together and you have some laughs together and stuff like that. That's a good recipe right there.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think it just breeds positivity for the whole event. I think and I always try to kind of suggest anyways to, in the TOC you brought it up, and that's a good example of, the participants see that we're trying to do a lot for them, make it nice and make it be nice and make it be good and everything else. And hey, they see folks doing their part, and then we in turn kind of ask them to do their part and present themselves in a good way, and it seems like that whole, process just bleeds through the whole event. And you kick it off in a manner like that. I think it does a lot for the event. Really does.
So
on several fronts.
Where do people get qualified? Kind of break it down a little bit. I need a refresher course, but you bring all the qualified people in here, but what does it take to get qualified for the World Championship?
Well, throughout the year, between January and the end of August, actually, we have a couple. I think our last qualifying event is the second weekend in September. But from January 1 through there, just like the night hunts, we have designated qualifying events across the country, at various clubs. And for our hunting beagle program, we have a total of right around 38 to 40 qualifying events throughout the year.
Wow!
And that's where
how many coonhound qualifiers are there?
Oh, there's more like 160, 70 coonhound qualifiers. So
right.
Big difference, huge difference.
Yeah.
And the numbers are kind of apples and oranges. They're coonhounds is a lot bigger, but so you win your cast at one of those qualifiers, and that qualifies you for the World Championship. But then we have a what we call our last chance qualifier is the second weekend in September, so it's the weekend after Autumn Oaks, which is the Don Senior McVeigh Memorial. That's held in Coshocton, Ohio. So that is a major event in itself, and so we use that event as a last chance, so to speak, and you just win your cast there at the McVeigh Memorial, and that also qualifies you. So that's a little different than the rest of the qualifiers are, but and that really works well. It does a couple things. It pulls in even more people to that event. Maybe some folks that wouldn't go, but they're not qualified yet, or don't have some dogs that aren't qualified yet, and give them a last chance. So it really works out good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
how many?
Go ahead.
Do you have a zone, and then goes to the finals?
No, the zones you're talking about is what we have for coonhounds, but here in Beagles we don't. I remember at UKC soon after I started, I think it was like 2006 maybe or 7. We did try zones, and the Beaglers just didn't really care for that. They kind of like the bigger event of the world. Everybody just gather at one weekend at the World Championship and go from all to one.
Shotgun start.
Yeah. But
I think our Beagler's a little bit different like that because I've seen that same thing. You see and hear about these huge foxhound events, where there's one weekend and you've got thousands of, hundreds of hounds on the grounds. Beagler's kind of in that same vein. They just like getting together like that. And
yeah, I think so. For the most part, you'll see a lot of similarities between the Beagle events and our coonhound events, but I would say the Beagle events are more just everybody in one big group. You don't see segregated groups here and there, and I'm not saying you do in coonhounds, but even more
sure you
so.
Do.
Well,
yeah, you do. You got the black and tan guys. You got the
that's true.
Walker.
Yeah. But here
at this event, everybody's hunting a Beagle.
Yeah, and everybody it's just kind of one big crowd. You don't see very many little groups around.
Right.
And it's good. But going back to Pennsylvania, the hunters, they loved it out there this year. I'm telling you, it's a good example of where game, having plenty of game to pursue at these big events is still at the top of the list. It is. And, with the way everything went out there, I don't know how many guys came up, hey, you got to bring it back. Guys that got beat early on, got to bring it back. And
what's different about it, Alan? What do you think the key is? Is it habitat, or is it?
I think habitat is one.
Farming practices.
I think habitat is one, and the other thing I think had a lot to do with it is the effort that the guys at the host club put in, the Waynesburg Beagle Club. Those guys put in for it, and the effort. A lot of that effort is just grooming. In October, first part of October, even out there, the undergrowth in a lot of places is still there, and in order to score, you need to be able to see the rabbits. And a rabbit can, in thick undergrowth, a rabbit can sneak right by you. You don't see it. So you want to have mow some paths and things like that, and have opportunities to see them, kind of set it up. And I think that's one thing that a lot of those guys put a lot of effort into, doing things like that.
So
grooming some of their, it's what we call grooming some of their hunting spots.
So you've got guys at this host club that are going out to private landowners and saying, hey, we'd like to bring a cast out here. Can we mow a path down through here?
Mm-hmm.
And the landowners are allowing them to do that on their property.
A lot of them are, but a lot of those guys aren't. Most of them probably aren't getting any more land for this than they already had.
Mm-hmm.
They've already got access to these places, and it's nothing new. And a lot of them have had them for years, so they've been able to do this for a while. But
it's just amazing. It's just the hunter landowner relationship there is what is interesting to me. That they've developed such a good relationship. They know Farmer John over here.
Yep.
They've hunted on Farmer John's place. Farmer John lets them, bush hog a couple paths to knock down some rabbits, and they've developed that relationship, helped him, and now it's like, well, sure, bring those folks out here and let them run some rabbits.
Yep, and
that's amazing.
It is, and you and I have had this conversation before. It's some of the little things that you can do to maintain that relationship between hunter and landowner, and sometimes it's invite them to your annual fish fry, club fish fry, or in the case we talked about this dinner thing, bring them on, invite them. The club could invite them to come out there to this dinner. They see the World Championship. They're honestly excited to be a part of it. Yeah. They don't have a dog. They don't know a whole lot about it, but they come out there and they see all these enthused beaglers and and just the atmosphere of the event. They love it. It's things like that make for good relations between hunter and landowner. It's not as easy anymore these days. We all know that, as compared, to get permission to hunt. But if you still do some things like that, you'd be surprised what can be accomplished between the two parties. Yeah, and how they can work together.
That's right.
And they'll you question, a landowner would allow them to mow some paths. Yep, that's how that works.
Yep.
Good relations between the hunter and the landowners.
We can't talk about that enough. I mean, we do major, multiple podcasts on that. We talk about it all the time, but this is a good example of how it actually works. How many casts did you say?
Well, we had 57 in round one, and then 16 in round two, and then 4 and 1, whatever that amounts to, is 70 some, I'm going to say.
So to put on this event, you needed 57 places.
Yep.
In somewhat of a relatively close region that allowed people to take hunters there and hunt.
Yeah.
Did you use satellite clubs, or was it out of this one?
Out of one club, and nobody drove over 40 to 45 minutes at most. Now, to say needed 57 spots, probably used at least that many throughout the weekend, but there were some spots that somebody would go, they hunted it in the morning, that they may go back to it in the evening, and some spots that are just so big that they didn't even hunt all of the same area in the morning. They're 90-minute hunts, so...
that brings up a question. I mean, when a club is picking a guide to take, how many acres are we talking about needed to put on a cast? Is it just one spot, or do you move, or you can move, and it really depends on what you're dealing with the spot that you're at. But you can run the same rabbit. You can score on them for 3 circles or score 3 lines on them before you need to pick the dogs up. So for a 90-minute hunt, I would say probably 90% of your trials are ran at that one spot. So you ask acres, probably, and not as much as you would think. You can, if you have 20 acres that has several rabbits in it, that's probably going to be enough. Yeah. Now,
And-
are the Beagles expected to all pack in on the same rabbit, or can you get a split race and score on that too?
You can get a split race, but that's not desired, and that does happen. But you really want them to pack. You know, an independent beagle is that's a faulty dog.
Mm-hmm.
In the beagle world, you want them to
So
pack.
we're not looking for deep and lonely with the Beagles.
No, not gonna work. Not gonna work.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah is right.
Oh, no, there's nothing wrong with the deep. I always bragged about my deep and lonely dogs too, but man, that sure makes it rough to put on an event when you've got,
Yeah.
when you start, looking at it from that standpoint and then breeding for traits for that. And wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, we have a rule for hunting beagle. You know, a dog that just continuously fails to pack, that's a scratching offense. You get that dog out of there.
How does that work? I mean,
You know,
does it have to be, you say continued?
well, if it just refuses to hark into other dogs that are on track, even if it has nothing going, just refuses to hark in and just always wants to be by itself. Because here's one of the differences here with beagles is that you really want them to hark in to the same track. Is oftentimes
I like that word, hark.
if you have a split track and they make a lose, they're not going to work on figuring that loss out as much as you would expect out of your coonhounds, say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what's going to happen a lot, they've kind of bred that into to hark a little sooner, and some of the coonhound guys are going to say, well, that's a me too dog. Well, I wouldn't call it a me too dog. You really want them to pack up together.
Right.
So they're going to lift their heads quicker and go to that split track. But there's also rules in place that, you know, if you leave a split track, there's X amount of time before a dog would take a minus or whatever for making a lose. But you want them to work at least a good amount of time before they do that, not just give up, but take off. So they will. I guess the point what I'm trying to get at is they will lift their head and go to that opposite split track sooner. So this dog we're talking about that is just always wants to be by itself, it's going to yank dogs around during the trial a lot.
Right.
You know, and then the other thing, if once those dogs come over to it, then it just wants to quit and go somewhere else, find another rabbit, you know, and things like that. That's the type of dog that the rules are gonna have it kicked out.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen that often at all, but it can.
Did have you found that guys that coon hunt and beagle hunt, how is that transfer back and forth between the two?
Very, very well, actually. We probably see more guys that are familiar with the night hunts that are also in the beagle trials, and they will even tell you in the rules they'll see some similarities just in the way certain rules are written. Because back in the day when they started the UKC's hunting beagle program, they basically used the night hunt rules as a model or to start with. So there's some rules that are written exactly the same.
Wow. It's fascinating to me. We don't talk enough about the beagle stuff on as a whole, in the podcast world.
Yeah, and I think it's a program. If you like handling dogs, and there's guys that do both, have done both, that agree. Jacob Coons is one that you know. Yeah. He does both, and he'll probably tell you he loves beagle handling dogs and beagle trials probably as well as night hunts, and he loves both. But it still has, and I always have as well. And there's probably more guys like Jacob than you think. When I say that right now, there's probably...
I'm glad you brought that up. Because... Yeah. Go ahead and finish that. I've got a point to make.
Well, there's probably, across the country, there's probably half a dozen to 10 guys that do both fairly religiously, actually.
Yeah. Well, the reason that intrigued me, that point I wanted to ask you about, a follow-up, one is, what's the average age of your participant? And I'll tell you why I ask.
Well,
go ahead and answer that. I'll tell you why I ask.
That's a good question. Glad you asked it, but it is. I don't know if you. I think it's harder to come up with an average age because they are anywhere. You see younger guys competing in this, so they're anywhere between 12 and 75.
No kidding.
It really is. It's not that maybe in coonhounds you're going to say the average age is going to be closer to late 20s to early 30s, somewhere in there between 25 and 35. Not here. I don't know what that one would be. It's such a diverse age group, more so than on the coonhound side. But here's the other thing I'll tell you, Chris, that is for guys that and of course I'm always going to be pushing for it, but guys that cannot keep up in the night hunts, that still like hunting dogs, and especially if they like hunting beagles, they might be surprised how much longer they can actually participate and do so effectively as a handler in beagle trials over night hunts. And we have quite a few guys like that, and the other thing that we have is in our rules that I love is the biggest thing in a beagle hunt, as far as physical, when it comes to physicalities or whatever, is running. So we score lines. It's just like it's simulated after a gun hunt. So the dog jumps a rabbit, and you basically, people that rabbit hunt know that you just stay in the same spot, on cottontails anyways. The dogs will loop this rabbit around, generally circle around. That rabbit's going to come right back where it started. Okay? And that's where you're going to shoot the rabbit when you're hunting, basically in that same spot. Well, that's how you also score here. So when they jump a rabbit, they circle it around. There's obviously some scoring procedures if they have little breakdowns, yada, yada. But they bring it back around. This rabbit comes by, it runs by a stump or something you call line right there. Mark the line right at that stump. And then you score line points right there and score the dogs. There's line points for the dog that comes through there first, second, third, or fourth. Now they gotta, you gotta be online, can't be way off. You gotta show that they have the line to score on it. But so the biggest physical thing for hunters or a handler is often when the dogs are coming back, the handlers will spread out a little bit, and all the handlers are looking for this rabbit to call a line. If I see it, I'm gonna yell line. And everybody comes running over there because we got to have majority there of handlers there to be able to see them come through the line to be able to score those dogs. So that running to that spot is probably the hardest thing for some of the older guys. And I say that to say this: we have a rule where an older guy can sign up to be an inactive handler. An inactive would be that they are an inactive handler is one when it comes to scoring lines like that. In a 4-dog cast, and you have one inactive handler. Now, when it comes to scoring lines, that's basically 3 guys, and only 2 of the 3 have to be there to see it. Okay. So this 4th guy is he's taken out. Now, the only thing that goes against him is, he may just not see how they scored him. And he may not get to see how his dog scored on there. He's just going to take their word, the rest of the guys on how they scored. But that actually works quite well. And
that's why they're called honor rules.
Exactly. And it allows this guy to actually, who's not as physically fit or capable anymore, to still be able to participate a lot longer here than they would in a night hunt. And I love that inactive rule policy or whatever you want to call it.
I'll bet you some of these old salty beagle guys, though, that know that they can't run, they're smart enough to know and savvy enough and seasoned enough that they need to be calling line, and have the young guys run to them.
Yeah.
They know where to put themselves to see that rabbit.
Yeah.
They've done it so much, that rabbit's they're reading the terrain. Here he comes. He's coming down through here. If I was that guy, I'd be looking for that opportunity to call line every time.
Well, here in the beagle trial, if you can't make it to the line or whoever called it, if you're out of position so far that you can't get there to the point where they can't score the dogs, you've kind of let your castmates down. Nobody's going to score. Right. So you want to be able to get there, but. And most of the time, they're not spread out that far that you can't, but all that can happen pretty quickly, Oftentimes that rabbit has a good lead on the dogs, but not always, And
Do they call line before they see the rabbit or immediately when they see it?
when they see it,
Yeah.
when they see it, right? Yep.
Yeah. So not everybody in the cast has to see the rabbit run through. You've just got to be able to call a clear line. You've seen the rabbit, you've got the landmark, you've called the line, and now you're waiting to be able to score the dogs as they come across.
Correct. Only one person
Got
in
it.
the cast has to see the rabbit.
Got it.
And they also carry,
Okay.
just like in night hunts, a lot of them carry the little laser lights or whatever to show in the tree where they're trying to
Yeah.
show somebody the coon. They use these same lights, lasers, to mark that stump. Yep, right there. Right there is where it went through, from left to right or right to left or however it came through.
Wow.
And that's the line.
Yeah, the reason I ask you about the demographics is because, in the competition coon hunting, it's just it can be very physical, and nobody knows it better than you, Alan, when you ran some of the, you've run some of those casts and doing the play-by-play back in, and you're walking
Yeah.
to every split tree and stuff like that. So a lot of, traditionally, I've known a lot of houndsmen that, once the coon hound became too physical for them, then they moved to Beagle. But it sounds like what you've got going on over there is a very diverse group, and it's not just a retirement sport for the old the old guys like me that are getting fat and out of shape and washed up in competition coon hunting.
Yeah, yeah. And, just like coonhounds, we also have youth handler series. We in Beagles, we call it first strike. But, so we're talking about what's the average age group. I'm telling you, we have a lot of kids that participate in these Beagle trials. Really do. Sure do.
So let's talk about this brace. I've never heard of the brace nationals.
Yeah,
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's the gun dog brace is what it's called.
Gun dog brace.
Yeah, so
lay that format out for
Well,
me.
that's a little different. It's we just started it in 2020. That was the first year we had it, and then COVID hit, so it kind of got a slow start.
No wonder I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. So 21 is kind of the first year, and it was the first year we had a national. So it's the gun dog Beagle gun dog program, where it's a little different, where you have, instead of handlers judging the dogs or what have you, or splitting out, we have two different formats. One is small pack option, and the other is gun dog brace. So in the first series of like a small pack option, you'll have up to 7 dogs in the same pack that draw out in one pack. And in gun dog brace, they start out in trios in the first series. So the gun dog brace part basically comes from the old traditional brace, where you have one dog against another. That's what a true brace is. But then, so the small pack option, it starts with bigger packs, and then you have the judges, 2 judges that actually run with the dogs, and they don't really score the dogs. They keep some notes, but then they remove dogs out of the pack. They pick up dogs, and that's just a part of a trial. You're getting picked up or what have you. And then they, after the whole first series, when all of your packs have ran, they come back with their notes, and they will say what dogs they want back for second series. And it's an elimination of a process of elimination. So going back to this brace, that's small pack option, but brace, they start the first series in trios. And then after that, they do the same in second series. It's kind of the same concept, but they do score the dogs there. So they have a high dog and some point stuff or whatever, what have you. Just in a nutshell, won't go too deep into it here, but then they do brace them after that. And then it's...
And what does that mean? What does that
two
mean
dogs.
exactly?
2 dogs are up against each other. Only 2. Now that's a true brace. Just heads up or whatever. And they have a high dog and maybe a low dog are braced together or whatever. Or like a first and second. If you were the high dog in the first series, high points dog, you're going to go up against the second dog in the final brace or whatever. And there's a chance that second dog could still overcome that first one. It doesn't happen that often, but that's how those work. And then at the end of the day, you have 4 different classes. You have generally they run males on one day and then females on another day. And they're run in 2 different classes, and it's by height. The 15-inch class, which is 15 and lower, or a 13 and shorter class. The 13s and 15s don't run together.
Okay.
And then, but they also run in an enclosure. So that's kind of the difference between that and the hunting beagle format.
Okay. So
So
are
the-
they scored the same?
No. There's, like I said, for the most part, they're in the gun dog brace. They do have they kind of score them a little bit in some fashion, but not like they would in hunting beagle. There's not a set scoring system like there is in hunting beagle.
So can you be successful on both your hunting beagle and your gun dog brace categories?
Well,
same type of dog?
Well, oftentimes, most of our small pack option gun dog stuff is in the South, in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, those places. Some in Tennessee now, but then out east, there the gun dog brace is more popular. So really, what I'm seeing, you have basically the same set of rules that they're going by, the same criterias, but you do see a difference in the style of dogs that are competing in those gun dog brace trials versus the small pack option. And I would say gun dog brace is quite a bit is more conservative, I'll say.
How do they compare to hunting beagle?
More conservative. Gun dog brace does for sure. So in a check area, check is when a dog has a what we call a momentary breakdown in the track. They break down.
Track balls.
So in gun dog brace, they really judge the dogs pretty strictly in that what they do in that check. And they don't want them wandering out of the check area. They want them to work from the inside out, which is the way they should. So a dog that's just going to move out right away is probably going to get dumped pretty quick, so to speak. But they really watch them and really judge them how they work in that check area and work it properly the way they want them to and from the inside out and not be too far reaching, so to speak. Whereas probably what we see in the South, where the SPO dogs, some of those are they're not quite as conservative maybe. But then as compared,
what does that mean exactly? They're not as conservative. They're going to let them range out a little bit more.
They're going to stretch out a little bit more in the check area, probably.
Yeah,
yep.
I got you.
Yep. But then you can actually, Chris, have a dog that is so bred so tight to work that check area, and that's pretty impressive. If you go watch a dog like that is bred to be so tight in a check area. When I say tight, some of them are, when that line breaks down, they're not doing a whole lot more than swiveling around on their hind ends type of area. Very tight.
Breeding for that specifically.
Yeah, yep. And it's
No
amazing.
kidding.
It's amazing how they've bred dogs to be that tight in a check area. Whereas, so then to say, can they compete in hunting beagle? I've seen dogs that could not. But I've also seen dogs in the SPO and in the deep South and those areas that absolutely could. I would say the dogs in hunting beagle for the most part have a little bit more foot. When I say foot, I'm talking about a little faster. As when we go hare hunting hare hunting, you want a dog that lifts its head up and not a dog that has its nose.
He's not a brace dog.
No, he's not going to have his nose down on the ground. You want a dog that has his can lift his head and run like that. So those aren't the same dogs in that respect. But there's dogs in that SPO that can absolutely could compete in our hunting beagle too. Just because if you have a dog has good line control, doesn't miss many lines, there's a lot of points to be scored on lines, and there's a lot of points to lose if you miss lines. Right. So in that respect, some of those dogs that are pretty conservative, they can really make up for maybe they're not carrying the front end and things like that. They can really make up when it comes to control.
There's a whole vocabulary surrounding this beagle stuff that I don't know. So but from what I'm gathering, and just to break it down for a guy that's never been involved in it, it sounds like, if I take my hunting beagle, I'm looking for a dog that is a very good track dog. He's got good speed or foot. He can get those line points and things like that. And a lot of times, he can cut and slash tracks a little better. He's not gonna be pivoting around in the, what do you call it, the check area.
Right.
You know, he's going to get that head up, and he's going to get it moving a little quicker. But the whole thing that I'm hearing here is the brace is a little bit more about traditional working style, and the hunting beagle is more about who can get that rabbit around here the fastest, most effective way. And style kind of goes out the window.
It will more so
not out the window per se, but you know, a little faster paced.
A faster paced dog is dog is right. You know, now we still have rules that, you know, cutting and slashing and things like that will get you thrown out or get you scratched too. You know, a dog gets warned for that. Cutting, slashing, and rough running is another one. You know. One thing that you don't want a dog to do is if you have a dog that runs the front end, or any dog for that matter in the pack, and they run a rabbit makes a turn and they run off the end of their little speeder, they run off the end of that track, and they're going to do that more. A dog that's faster is going to run off those ends probably quicker than a slower dog will, obviously. But then it becomes a thing of how they use their mouth. You know, a dog that continues to bark after he's run out of trail and pulling his other pack mates astray or whatever, that's no good. You know, so it's things like that you look out for and that you get judged on and things like that. You know, when all those things happen. You know, but so there's kind of a fine line between having that foot and and having line control still. You know, and
I just go back to my childhood. My brother had. You met Matt last year. He had beagles. He had the first little beagle he got was Sally, and she was a 13-inch beagle, and she was more of like a brace dog. She was very consistent, very methodical on her tracking.
Yeah.
When she made a lose, she didn't get way out of pocket or anything like that. And then I brought home Barney, and Barney was a 15-inch beagle, and Barney could fly. But Sally was the anchor that kept Barney on track.
Yeah.
You know, because he would fly off the ends. He'd get out of that. You know, he'd run past tracks, and before you know it, you know, he's out here looking for a track 30, 40 yards away from where the rabbit ran, and then here comes Sally through there, tried and true. Yelp, 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 yelp. Get to the check area. Boom, she's back on it, and then Barney had sucked back in.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you what got really crazy is we had this little mutt terrier running around there, and she bred Sally, and those dogs were a train wreck, man.
Yeah.
They absolutely would fly on tracks and So it was a completely different beast at that point. But I get it. I think I'm getting a better idea of what we're looking for here.
Yeah, you know, and there's different. You know, the hunting beagle format is really geared around the hound and hunter. Just kind of geared around hunting rabbits, really. You know, if you can't score, your dog can't bring a rabbit around, you're not going to have any game to put in your bag. You know, and you're not going to get any points in a trial if they can't do that. So they got to be able to do that. You know, there's other registries that have good solid beagle programs too. You know, the AKC is known to have they've been around for years and years. You know. And to be a champion, a field champion over there, and we get compared a lot to there, and their titles they hold a lot of integrity, and rightfully so. But our champions get compared to their champions a lot, and I would agree, that's apples and oranges, really. The setup to earn those points and earn those degrees is apples and oranges. It's not the same, but. Just like coonhounds, UKC has the grand titles. So once a dog becomes a champion, one of the differences is now they compete. They move up and compete in that category and only against those champions. So and then that's how they earn their grands. But if they get to that class, it's going to take a pretty nice dog to be able to earn their grand degree. So I would say, just the way the rules are and everything. Is once a dog is a grand, that's where they should be compared. The grands compared to their champions, maybe more. But the one thing I will say that I think the way our rules have been, off game is a no-go. That's a toss out. The dogs cannot be encouraged to hunt. They have to do that all on their own. And obviously, you have to have a dog that hunts. A dog that doesn't hunt, stands around, doesn't go hunting, that dog's going to get, there's rules that gets that dog tossed. The other thing is we talked about scoring lines. So, and they also compete for strike or jump. So after you score the same rabbit 3 times, circle it 3 times, the rules are such that you got to pick the dogs up and move them away and go compete for a new rabbit, a different rabbit, and compete for strike again and jump and things like that. So with that said, you handle dogs quite a bit. Yeah. Anytime there's whatever, you handle dogs quite a bit in a Beagle trial. So what I'm getting at is if you have a grand, the one thing that you're going to have with a grand, I feel like in UKC, is you're going to have a dog that will hunt, and it will hunt by itself, doesn't need any help there, alone or with other dogs. Alone, it's going to be able to do it. It is going to handle it well, and it's going to be able to bring a rabbit around for you, and it's not going to be trashy. Nice. So I think as a whole, UKC Grand is a pretty reputable rabbit dog. Right. And I'm biased, of course, but I truly also.
You think?
Yeah. No. Well, you can say that. But seriously,
it's just like trying to compare, Formula One racing to NASCAR. To, whatever.
It's not the same.
A different set of rules.
Yep. It's not the same.
A different goal. Yeah. A different. So, if you're going to compare race car drivers, it's hard to compare a race car driver from one circuit to another. You need to compare them within the circuit.
Yeah.
You get a few individuals that can do both. Yeah. But they're I get it.
The other part that we run into a lot is guys from other formats where, just like in the gun dog format, where the judges run with the dogs. So if I bring my dog to a trial, you're one of the judges. My dog is your dog for that day in the trial. You judge my dog, and however you see things, that's how it's going to be for that.
Yeah.
But so in the hunting beagle format, it's like 4 dogs in a cast or out in a cast, and one of those guys is selected to be the judge. And you know how all that works. All those judges are selected beforehand to make sure we have got honorable judges and yada yada. But guys that are not used to this format that we call the hound and hunter have a hard time wrapping their head around how it would work that I could have a dog in a cast that I'm also the judge of.
Right.
But you being familiar with the night hunt stuff, that does in fact work, and it works quite well.
Yeah.
Better than, but so.
It couldn't work. It really couldn't work without it. Honestly, we could not.
Not in today's world, especially.
No, I mean, everybody, you'll hear guys say, I think we ought to go back to non-hunting judges. I mean, you can't even, a lot of times you can't even get enough people there to hold a 4-dog complete cast,
Right.
And then thinking about putting 4 judges or 10 judges that are non-hunting, getting people to show up. If my dog's not in the hunt, I can tell you I'm not going,
Yeah.
for the most part. And then when you get into the bigger events, then I think you guys and PKC, everybody recognizes that, and puts those hunting judges in when it's most beneficial for the integrity of the hunt and things like that. So
well, I think there's a lot. I think we often say that some of our best judges that we have are actually, a lot of them are hunting, have a dog in it.
Yeah, true.
They can't tell me I was, I didn't compete back in the 60s and 70s, but from what I saw in the late 80s, early 90s, and when they still used more hunting judges at some of the bigger events, they had some dang good ones, but they also had to have a judge for every cast, and there was a lot of them that got judges that shouldn't have been there. I know those. So
right. You got that right, man. It's like we'll have so-and-so judge a cast. Well, he's never been in a competition in his life.
Right, but he doesn't have a dog in it. He doesn't have a dog in it. He should be fine, right?
How's he going to know the rules? Yeah, for sure. Sometimes the good old days aren't as good as what we try to remember them as. So, Hey, how's the podcasting business? You and Trevor been turning out podcasts.
Yeah, well, we have.
How do you enjoy it?
We're having fun with it. I think we're getting more relaxed with doing them. It takes a little bit, as you probably know, but we're nowhere close to where guys like you. But we try, and they're doing quite well actually. And we have a lot of fun with it. Different. It's just we did one that dropped yesterday, as of the day of this recording, I guess, on reproducers. That was a fun one for us.
I'll to listen to
I love that kind of stuff and breeding and things like that. We pulled up the information for the top 10 or top 20 all-time sires that produced the most pups. Not just title dogs, but looking at some of those lists is just, if you like things like that, that was fun. Except when it comes to, it would have been so good to have for certain breeds, it would be so good to have somebody that is very knowledgeable in a specific breed to sit down and have discussions with them. But you get down to the treeing walkers, and you look at the current and even the historical ones and what it takes to get on that list. Really just look at that. And one point I'll bring up here, and this was kind of a Beagle related segment here, but let's segue over to coonhounds for a second. As you know, just like Big Country is one that's not on yet. Well, he is, but and he's kind of the same way. It's just going to be a matter of a little bit of time here. But
he's current. He's on the current list. He's not on historical.
But get to the treeing walkers and J.R. Gray's Willie Dog. He's one of the hottest stud dogs out there. We didn't mention him. We didn't until the end. We never mentioned Willie. That's how strong that those reproduction records are in the Walker breed.
Yeah,
it's crazy if you really look at it and look at that. It's pretty. But I love stuff like that. It would have just been even better, talking about podcasts, to have somebody on that is more knowledgeable of more of those dogs than what Trevor and I are. But we have a lot of fun with it, and it's going pretty well.
Well, you always can follow that up. The thing about creating podcasts is you come across a good topic, and then afterwards you have the conversations, and you start thinking, it's like, well, that was an interesting concept, so I'm going to go find somebody that can specialize that. And then you can always refer back to the episode you did on the historical. And this week we've got, so-and-so on here who's been breeding these hounds for a number of years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cool thing about podcasts.
Yep, it is.
It's kind of self-perpetuating at times,
Yeah. The one thing that we liked about it, and the one thing that kind of drove us to try to have something, is we write a lot of articles, and it's frustrating for us to write so much, publish things that people just don't read for whatever reason. And they tend to like.
It's frustrating to produce podcasts and then not have people listen to it.
Yeah, well. But I think people tend to listen to things like this more so than read a magazine or read an article, oftentimes, it seems like. So when it comes to rules and talking about rules and things like that, we thought this would be a platform that might just help us serve us better, And I think some of that is really working well. But the one thing that I will mention that I didn't think about so much, but sometimes when you go back and listen to some of those, especially rule things, you're like, oh man, it's easy to say something wrong, or you go back, man, I wish I wouldn't have said it like that, and sometimes even blatantly wrong and didn't even think about it, but you probably know what I mean.
I've eaten crow.
Yeah.
Well, I did it with a podcast where I had to have you come on and clarify some things on an Ask Me Anything Friday episode that we were on.
I don't think that was as far off as what you're.
Well, the problem with producing podcasts, and I've tried to tell people this, just because I'm producing a podcast doesn't mean I'm not the same dumbass I always was, and it's a learning thing, and it's just. When I'm producing these podcasts and talking, I feel like I'm just facilitating the conversation from people who have a lot more knowledge than I do to get that information out there. That's the beautiful thing about it. That's why our format that we use is like that. not to set us up as the experts on much of anything, but to bring the experts to people that want the information.
Right. That's a good way of putting it. I think
Yep.
Trevor does a great job with putting topics together, and he does his thing a little bit.
I know who's carrying the load over there.
Well, he does his setup looks a little
Shout out to
different.
Trevor.
Yeah, his setup looks a little different than mine. He has all his little notes and this and that, and I'm kind of more off the cuff kind of guy than he is. But hey, kudos to him. I just don't feel like I have the time, or I don't take the time to make up all these little notes. But then the end result is often better on his part than it is mine. But no, we enjoy it, and they've been fun to do for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they can find it. What's it called? It's called UKC Hunting Dog Ops Podcast. Is that what it is?
Almost. UKC Hunting Ops Podcast.
Hunting Ops Podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is a good podcast. You guys put a lot of work into getting the right information out there. It answers a lot of questions. One thing I would recommend to anybody that's listening to podcasts is, like, when you go to the podcast, you find it in your app. You can actually browse through and find all of the titles and all the topics. We attach all our show notes with every episode that describes everything. So you're going to find out. I think we're dropping 272 episodes tomorrow. Once you do so many, you can't remember what episode numbers and different things. And I'll get messages occasionally, hey, have you ever done a podcast like this? Well, my advice to listeners is scroll through and see if you can find it before you, because I get requests like that all the time. And with so many different topics, it's easier for me to forget, and I'll usually come up with it. But you'll find that out. You're going to start getting, hey, why don't you guys do a podcast on this, or why don't you do? We did do a podcast on that, and it was episode 32.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I like that we can be diverse, and trying to. We haven't done one on squirrel hunting yet, or the squirrel dog programs, or anything like that, and that's a smaller program for us. But we've yet to do some things like that. The one I'm looking forward to actually tomorrow that I'm doing, or not tomorrow, next week. Might be the first week in December, might be the weekend after that, with Todd Kellum, is the guys from U.S. Sportsman Alliance are coming down. Yeah. And so we're going to do a podcast with them. I look forward to doing that. Another one that's kind of different. But
is Eric coming? And
yeah,
who's coming? Eric.
I think Eric.
And
I forget. Eric was one of them. I forget who all he said was coming. But I told him, I said, hey, we need to use this opportunity and do a podcast with them. So. Yeah, some things like that. Yeah. The other thing that I like is that I'm
gonna make a plug here real quick.
Yeah.
For us, matter of fact, I just got everything finalized this week. But when people join us and support us on Patreon, we're going to pay for your membership to the Sportsman's Alliance, and it comes with a bunch of benefit packages. And the reason we did that, when you look at their magazine, The Advocate, there's so much information in there. It's Brian Lynn does an outstanding job of bringing all that information together and putting it together and putting it in a format where we can glean all that information of current events and things going on that are absolutely 100% affecting you to be able to turn your beagle loose, for you to be able to hunt bird dogs. This month's Advocate is a lot of it is geared towards the recent legislation in California about the way that outdoor industry can be promoted to the youth. It's an extremely, one of our former guests, John Boland, he's been on the podcast a couple times. He worked for the ASPCA and left that organization because of the corrupt practices over there. He was featured this month. So a lot of good stuff there and you don't have to join us on Patreon to do it. But if you don't, join the Sportsman's Alliance and get involved. They are they're the guardians at the gate, and they have the infrastructure and everything that we don't have, that UKC doesn't have, but that's what they do. They are the watchdog for our hunting community.
And you couldn't have said it any better. They are really, really as legit can be.
Yep. They've been around for 43 years, I think. I mean, so they've got a strong track record.
Yep.
They're filing lawsuits. You know, it's not only, you know, we're not sitting around anymore and watching the animal rights activists file these frivolous lawsuits. I keep saying U.S. Sportsman's Alliance because I'm old school. It's just Sportsman's Alliance.
It is, yeah, it is. I do the same thing.
Yeah, they are suing them back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, we talking to them, we get a caller or somebody will send us a message. Hey, we've got this bill, you know, that we're dealing with, you know, and are you aware of it? And yada yada yada.
Well, I've done it to you.
Yeah, well, and often more. I don't know that I have ever went over to the Sportsman's Alliance and they haven't already been on it. They're already on it. They know about it.
Yep.
There's very little that slips by them that they don't already, that they're not on.
That's right. Well, Alan, we better wrap this one up, buddy.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. It's always good, and this was another fun one. But yeah, you got to make sure you get back up to the UP with us one of these times and cut some more dogs loose and run some more hare.
It's one of the funnest things you can do. I'm telling you, that's a great trip to make with you guys. So I always appreciate the invite. I appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk some Beagles, and we'll wrap it up.
All right, anytime, Chris. You have a good one.
Yep. Until next time, you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine.
If you want more information on the Sportsman's Alliance, go to houndsmanxp.com, click the support tab, join us on Patreon, and we will sign you up for the Sportsman's Alliance. It's time to take a stand. It's time to fight back. Sportsman's Alliance is a group that we know can do that. That's why we partnered with them. So when you join us on Patreon at the $12 level, we're going to cover your membership to the Sportsman's Alliance. I just got my Advocate magazine from the Sportsman's Alliance, and I'm telling you, there's tons of information in there that you need to know. If you call yourself a houndsman, if you're serious about hunting in the future, you've got to engage. It's time to stop just venting on social media. We can help you. Go to houndsmanxp.com, click on the support tab. We'll get you signed up for the Sportsman's Alliance. Also included in your Patreon membership, we do monthly drawings that are valued up to $100. We do a semi-annual drawing, which is up to $500. We do an annual drawing up to $1,000. We've got promo codes over there. All our gear is available, and we try to get that out to you, and we support you. We've got bonus material, tailgate talks, all kinds of stuff on Patreon. It's a great value. Plus, you put your name on the line with hundreds of other houndsmen who have stepped up and said enough is enough. It's time to fight back. If you want to see a difference in this world, be the difference. Join us at houndsmanxp.com. Sign up for Patreon. Let us get you plugged in with Sportsman's Alliance, the world's premier organization that is fighting for your hunting freedoms.